for Monday, November 8th. And we are proceeding without broadcast on the cable channel due to technical difficulties. So our apologies to those who normally would be watching on that. Hopefully they will catch it on YouTube. First item is roll call.
Laura Tulowitzki.
Here.
Karen Spears Novacek.
Here.
Tom Nymus.
Here.
Mary McGrath. Mayor McGrath. Jennifer Mazias.
Here.
Carl Broberg.
Here.
Dave Anderson.
Here.
Quorum.
Okay, thank you. And if everyone could just take a moment and move your microphone closer to you, just to the side of your papers even, and just come right in there so you can talk right into the microphone would be fantastic. And next we'll do the pledge.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, next item is approval of minutes from the council meeting on October 11th.
I move approval of the minutes of the meeting of October 11, 2021.
I'll second that.
Motion by Karen and second by Tom. I turned in my usual couple typo edits to Tony earlier, but nothing substantive. Unless anyone else has any questions or discussion, then I would take a vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Next item is the approval of monthly expenditures via roll call vote.
Madam Mayor, I move approval of the review of the monthly expenditures.
I'll second.
Motion by Karen and a second by Laura to approve expenditures. Roll call.
Dave Anderson. Yes. Carl Broberg.
Yes.
Jen Mazias. You're on mute, Jen.
Yes. Yep. Sorry, I was on mute. Yes.
Tom Nymus.
Yes.
Karen Novacek.
Yes.
Laura Tulowitzki.
Yes.
And that motion carries. Next item is public comment. Is anyone here for public comment this evening? Sure, go ahead and step up, and if you would please state your name and address, or write it down, or both.
Hi, my name is Mary Nowakowski. I'm here with my husband Jim. We live at 216 West Bayfield Street. We are the owners of the property for the agenda item number 4 on tonight's agenda. We own all 3 properties on the Bayfield Street spur, as it is now being called. It's a seldom used street. We average about 5 cars per week, if that. We support the city closing the street. It's going to be a major inconvenience for us personally, but we think it's going to make, it makes a lot of sense to improve safety in that particular area and also improve downtown Washburn. The Wisconsin DOT recommends that this street be closed. We have personally met with both Jessica Boker and Jared Starren, and if you have any more questions about why they want it closed, it would probably be best to direct those questions to the DOT. But we have met with them. They've been very cooperative and supportive. When the street is, if the street is closed during 2024 construction, it would be nice to remove the utilities underneath that street. Currently, the current utility lines are old and they are needing to be replaced anyway. In your packet, I made some drawings, which I'm sure you've seen, to show how appealing and this visible property would be with the street closed. And we're willing to work on that. The DOT has already volunteered to provide topsoil and gravel. And it's something that we can work with them together on if the street is closed. We thanks a lot for your time and consideration. We're going to stay here for the agenda item, but we did want to talk to you first in public comments. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your comment. Anyone else here for public comment? I don't see anybody online. I just checked my phone to make sure it wasn't someone saying something about the microphone or something, and apparently my daughter is entering Death Valley, so it's an update. The important update. So seeing as though there is no other public comment other than from my daughter via text, we will move on to mayoral announcements, proclamations, and appointments. So just a few announcements. Thanks to the staff who worked Saturday at the fall cleanup day. Much appreciated, and hopefully you'll take some time off to make up for that. I had printed out something about Veterans Day and then I forgot to pick it up from the printer, so I'm going to just do my best to remember the one thing that it said really that I thought I was going to forget. So Veterans Day is this Thursday, November 11th, and just wanted to thank all of our veterans, and I know that there are some in the audience. It turns out that it's always on November 11th because that's the anniversary of Armistice Day. So it used to be called Armistice Day, and that was the ending of World War I, if I'm not mistaken. And then after the next, after they decided to move it to Veterans Day to include all veterans from all wars, and so that's why it's now inclusive of all veterans, and we thank all of them for their service. So please remember that if you end up having the day off on Thursday, like some of us do, that is the reason for that. And just wanted to mention that I realized that the newsletter that goes out quarterly with the utility bills does not go to people who rent and don't pay utilities. And that just occurred to me over the weekend when someone called asking about the fall cleanup day. They called my house and asked the question of that they had, and I realized that they had not received the newsletter with that information in it. And so I did, just before this meeting, post a link because we do upload the newsletter to the website also under the mayor's page. And so I included a link to the newsletter in a post on the mayor's Facebook page. And that's always something that you should be able to access and share a link with someone if they don't look at Facebook or just need that information. We always have some printed out here at City Hall as well. So that is something that I'll try to remember to do, is post a link to that when we do post it on the website. And then some of us are getting the How Are We surveys that I just wanted to mention. That is an effort that is being run by a nonprofit organization through, I want to say, Wisconsin Economic Development Corporation. We don't have anything to do with that survey, but we were just asked to share the information so that if people had questions about why that is being distributed and that information is being collected, we would at least have some information on that. Apparently it is a very in-depth survey, and I can imagine that it would be, there will be some concern about how much information is being shared in that survey, but it is supposed to be very secure and anonymous, and they will not match your name or information with the answers. So they're hoping to get a good result that will help them assess how our community is doing other than just by the numbers. Hearing more from people about what their actual situations are. So that'll be interesting. And then lastly, we are wrapping up finally the community branding process that ended up being extended because of a hiatus that needed to be taken partway through. But that is coming to a close, and we're putting the final photos and touches on that information. And hopefully we will have someone from UW Extension at our December meeting to walk us through what that looks like. So stay tuned for that. I don't believe I have any actual proclamations this month, so then I'll move on to the appointment, and that is to the library board. And that position became open recently when Tara Wisniewski stepped down, and we did have an application come in, very timely, from Elsa Brown. And so I would ask for a motion to approve an appointment of Elsa Brown to the library board.
I would move to approve Elsa Brown in the appointment to the library board of trustees.
Second.
Motion by Laura, second by Dave, to approve that appointment. Are there any questions, comments, discussion? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you to Elsa, and welcome to the library board. Really exciting to have another younger member of the community stepping up to help out with some of our community committees. Our next item is discussion and action on conditional use permit requests for manufacturing use in a commercial area to operate a coffee roasting business in accordance with the regulations of 8-476 for property zone C3 located at 101 West Bayfield Street. Jared Trimbo, petitioner. We did have a public hearing at the planning and zoning meeting, and that committee is requesting approval of this. I just want to say for the record, don't say Washburn doesn't support industry when hopefully we're supporting this new business that is an industry coming to our commercial district. So one of many examples of the city supporting manufacturing where it is appropriate in the city. And maybe I'm jumping the gun here because we don't even have a motion to approve or anything at this point.
Madam Mayor, I would move approval of sorry. Move approval of this conditional use permit for Folkfield Coffee Roasters, Jared Trimbo's permit.
And I would second that motion.
I'll take Karen's second since she was trying for the first. So we have a motion by Laura and a second by Karen with supporting third. Is there any question or comments about this application? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. And for those of you who may not know, this is at the former, well, still current Big Top offices that will be moving after the end of the year. So that's really, really exciting that we already have something ready to go in there, and looking forward to some locally roasted coffee. Next item is discussion and action on recommendation ordinance 21-006 to amend the city's zoning code to provide consistency between the zoning code and Title 7, Chapter 11 of the city's ordinances regarding the regulation of short-term rentals.
Madam Mayor, I would move approval of ordinance, or ordinance number 21-006. to amend the city zoning code to provide consistency regarding short-term rentals.
Second that.
So that's a motion by Karen, second by Carl. Is there any questions on this? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Okay, next item is discussion and action on vacation of West Bayfield Street spur in the 200 block of West Bayfield Street to South Washington Avenue after the 2024 reconstruction project. However, we have an update, I think, that I think may affect a little bit of how we proceed. Scott?
So today we had a meeting with the DOT and had discussed some more details regarding this issue. Everyone is, from the DOT perspective and from staff here, are supportive of closing it to vehicular traffic at this time. However, we are still discussing utilities. We would have to engineer the water and sewer utilities to determine whether or not they can be rerouted up to around the curve and then down to Washington Avenue. So that's one question that is outstanding. But then the other concern that came up is related to stormwater. And there's a significant stormwater issue in this neighborhood here. There is sort of a dip in the highway, and that road does kind of collect a lot of the rain and the runoff that comes from Highway 13 and up above, and then kind of funnels that down to down Washington Avenue. There was prior to the construction of the IGA, there was a more defined ravine in that area, and so some of that has changed as construction has occurred over time. So the bottom line is they're not sure at this time whether or not it would be a good idea to actually vacate if we have to have some sort of water or stormwater infrastructure within that area, and so that needs to be further engineered. So the question really comes down to how far can we go at this point. So I recommend, one, if you are in agreement to close it for vehicular traffic, please say so, and we will inform the DOT to include that in their plans. We can further study how the utilities will play out in this area and determine whether or not full or partial vacation of that street will be a good idea, depending on what they are able to engineer to resolve that issue in that area.
Okay, thank you very much for that update.
Mayor, I have a question.
Yes, Karen?
Part of that engineering information would be part of the more comprehensive engineering work that they're doing on this first segment of Bayfield Street that's going to be where utilities are going to be replaced.
This is part of the first phase, correct?
Okay.
So this is in process right now.
So if I can frame this
Okay.
up, it looks like we're looking to close that street for vehicular traffic after the 2024 reconstruction, and potentially vacate if the engineering study determines that utilities can be relocated.
Correct. However, on the vehicular traffic, we need to include that in the plans now, even though it technically would not go into effect until that point of the project. And so that's where this gets a little bit tricky as far as the actual vacating too. We're not in a rush at this point to do that, so we have that time. But what level we would close or vacate that street is going to be dependent on the final utility design. But we need to know in advance in order to proceed with plans.
So a motion at this point to close to vehicle traffic would be sufficient for us to move forward with DOT and plans.
Right,
For
to
that.
close to vehicular traffic as
Again,
part of
phase
the phase one reconstruction project.
So I would make a motion that that section be closed to, I can't say the other word, vehicle traffic in the phase one reconstruction project.
I second that.
If this is closed to, so if we're making a motion to, I just want to clarify that if we're making a motion to approve closing this to vehicle traffic, does that mean it can be modified to retaining the utilities? So just some level of closing it to traffic.
So it would be closed to traffic, but at this point, we have not made any determinations as to who has ownership of the land, or is there any sort of easement or right of way that would still exist. This topic will be discussed further as we go forward. But at this point, the decision is we don't want to have vehicular traffic there.
Okay.
So just the timely part of the decision is to close it to traffic regardless of what happens with the utilities.
My only concern is because as I'm looking at this map, originally I thought great, but now I'm starting to wonder if, being that we have limited parking, there's a lot of parking that's needed right downtown here. And is it still considered vehicular traffic if it's a parking area, or, I mean, if it's used that way?
I think what it's doing is just cutting it off so you can't drive down that road. So parking would actually theoretically be extended a little bit on the road.
Sure.
However, this road here, and the road that actually comes right between the buildings would become private property if it's vacated eventually.
Right.
But that's up in the air at this point. And we can go ahead and allow Noakowski's to join in on this item, correct?
No,
It's on
we very rarely have anybody parking there.
If you could just step up to the microphone, that would be awesome, so that people on the can hear.
I
I
don't know
don't
if
think
I
we're
should say
on the agenda.
Yeah, thank you. Mary's a better speaker, but I can just say that we very rarely have anybody parking there. You know, and we probably have more people going the wrong way down the one-way street than we have actual parking.
Okay.
So it's pretty rare. You know, we said 5 a week is traffic, maybe 1 a week for parking,
Yeah.
so.
Okay.
I don't know if that answers your question.
It does, yeah.
Okay.
I mean, it seems like it would be something that would be used a lot during the summer, but maybe it just doesn't.
It does happen, I can say that.
Is there a reason the DOT wants to do this?
I think it's for safety because those two driveways are so close to each other, and there is confusion at times if someone does want to turn down the private, or not the private, but what are we calling it? Spur. It's confusing if someone's coming out of the IGA and they think someone's turning into the IGA, and when in fact they want to be turning just beyond the IGA. It's really dangerous, actually. And Mary?
Yeah, I don't even approach our property that way anymore because of so many near misses. You know, the likelihood of getting T-boned there is pretty strong, and it's something that the DOT really emphasized with us. They don't like those driveways, one right next to another, especially to a driveway that's used very, very frequently, that being the IGA, and ours being less used, less frequently. So it's a big safety issue.
Does that answer, Dave?
Yeah.
Okay.
So the traffic would be blocked coming onto Highway 13, but still be accessible on Washington?
It would be accessible unless we end up eventually vacating that spur, and that's
That's what I'm saying.
going to depend partially on
Right.
the utility situation.
Right now, it's a one-way street going from Bayfield to Washington. It doesn't allow traffic going the other way.
Well, that was what I'm getting
Oh,
at.
And then,
okay.
and there's no place to turn around in there anyway.
So you would be, blocking any traffic, I guess, really, then, because you wouldn't, I don't know if the one-way street would change.
Been a one-way street
if
since
we-
Ross Marine, as far as I remember.
It'd be a dead end.
Well, this happened in 1936. This is well before Ross Marine.
Right.
So, yeah, it seems to make sense to go along with that recommendation. So we do have a motion on the floor and a second. Is there any other question or discussion? And this is just to close it to vehicular traffic at this time during the reconstruction.
Okay.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you very much, Noakowskis, for all your work on this.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And for letting us drive down your road.
There you go.
Okay, the next item is discussion and action on detour route options for the State Highway 13 reconstruction project in 2024. And that is tab 5 of your packet. So,
Do you want me to pull it up on the screen?
if you could, that would be really helpful. Thank you.
I know how to do this.
So initially, the DOT proposed two-way traffic on Omaha Street after you get to Omaha Street on Bigelow. And after they were here and saw that that really could be quite problematic, because I think my understanding is that with people turning, that's really going to be what blocks things up too much and causes a lot of congestion, in addition to the fact that you have a lot of traffic going on Omaha Street. And so, Scott, I'm not sure when they came up or how this came about, these two other alternates. I'm going to let Scott talk about that a little bit.
So in the beginning of October, when we had the public information meetings and we had everyone here in town, it was really one of the first times that we've had all the new people involved with this project here on site, and they went around and they checked numerous things, including the detour sites. And pretty much all the engineers, both ours and the state's, agreed that Omaha Street for two-way traffic was not going to work well. It was going to cause a lot of difficulties as far as traffic and being able to turn and access businesses and so forth. And so the began to look at that time for alternatives. One of the alternatives that we had discussed way early on when we began working on this project was the utilization of Holman Lakeview Drive. The problem with Holman Lakeview Drive is that it is a gravel road, and that's not going to be acceptable. It would need to be paved in order for it to be an acceptable route. So if we were able to do that, we would be able to split the traffic. You'd have the southbound traffic utilizing Omaha Street still. Northbound traffic would be utilizing Bigelow, or I'm sorry, Holman Lakeview Drive and Bigelow Street, except for the very ends where they would have to join up. So that's kind of what we were looking at, and understand that this is a still pretty high level concept, because we are still looking at phasing this project in a couple phases. They had talked about 5 phases. That may be too many, and we discussed today cutting that down to 3, because the more phases we have, it expands the time frame for the project, and we still want to get this done within one construction season. And so these detours will kind of be movable and adjustable as we go forward. And once the contractor is selected, which would not be until the winter before the project, they would also be putting their 2 cents into the pot. But we want to go into the bidding process with a clear, defined plan that at least sets some limits. So if we were able to have Holman Lakeview Drive paved, this would be an option. The Bigelow Holman Lakeview Drive kind of keeps at least half of the traffic out of a residential neighborhood. There is a little bit of a jog that we have to deal with down at a campground entrance area, which is really unavoidable, and then until it kind of wraps around back on to Omaha Street by Washington Avenue. The difficulty is this would be in the neighborhood of $150,000 to pave Holman Lakeview Drive, and who's going to pay for that? Well, as you see within your budget, if the city had to pay for that, given that we have, a little over $200,000 that we, or close to $300,000 tax levy that we generally put towards capital projects, that's basically taking half of our capital budget just to do this particular project. So then that's something that you would have to decide, and we would have to have this project completed in 2023 for it to be a viable option. So that would be a significant commitment. We have been pushing the DOT as to, well, hey, if you've got any extra funds lying around, we certainly could use some help with this. Today they made 0 commitments, but they are looking at options and any potential cost sharing that could be out there, but it's always a little bit of a tit for tat on that. And we will probably at the next meeting or the meeting thereafter be reviewing our agreement with the DOT as well. So this is a project, but it would add to those costs. So this is one option. We believe that this would be the preferred option if we would be able to have Holman Lakeview Drive paved for a reasonable cost.
Are you needing a decision on this before we can get any kind of support from the DOT? Because it sounds like they're looking into options. That's what you said?
They are working on this issue as well. And so this has to go, I mean, do you need a decision tonight? We don't necessarily have to have a decision tonight, but we'll need a decision soon. Because this is all part of the planning that's got to be wrapped up here by the spring.
My question is, can we pick one of these options, and if the choice is this option, can we just say that that is our preference without knowing how we're going to pay for it at this time? Or are we committing to paying for it by voting for it?
Those are committed, then the DOT, and how do you light a fire under?
My suggestion would be that if you wanted to do that, you would make your support for this option contingent upon significant financial assistance to make that happen.
So how does that help the engineers in planning? If that's not saying that's what we're doing.
So should we talk about the other option, just so that we have both on the table? Do you want to walk us through the other one, Scott?
So the second option that we came up with was to utilize mostly West 3rd Street. So in this scenario, the northbound traffic would utilize Bigelow, then Omaha Street up to First Avenue West. Southbound traffic would turn at First Avenue West to West 3rd Street, cross Washington Avenue, go down to 9th Avenue West, jog down 1 block to Pine Street, utilize 2 blocks of Pine Street to 11th Avenue West, and then either would rejoin Bigelow, or if that section of the project is done, they would be able to just exit right out onto Highway 13. So the drawback, of course, is yes, we're going through another residential neighborhood just like we are with Omaha Street, but our options are limited. Keep in mind that this is for vehicular traffic. Large trucks that do not make deliveries within Washburn are supposed to take the long detour around. But this is going to be all the campers and the cars and the regular traffic. So during the summer, the traffic.
A couple of quick questions.
Yes.
Would there have to be some sort of stop sign or something added in for the traffic crossing Washington Avenue?
Well,
There is already.
the initial thought is that we would keep basically the same arrangement. We would have to have a temporary stop sign on Washington Avenue, is because we have one here. So we would basically temporarily be moving the stop sign up.
You need one at 8th Avenue as well.
Correct.
Right, yeah.
So,
Okay, and then my other question is, regardless of which option we're looking at, if we're looking at the phased approach, are we only utilizing the Bigelow Street part of the reroute during the time when that section of the project is happening?
The short answer to that question is yes. Again, keep in mind that the phasing of this project is still in flux. And so it would not be the entire stretch of this detour would probably not be utilized all at the same time. So this is going to be done in probably at least 3 phases. Also keep in mind, in both options, we would have to have temporary one-ways on whichever streets we are utilizing.
One more thing real quick, and then, so the one-ways, we're still separating the traffic to keep it to a minimum of disruption with turning and that sort of thing, as opposed to sending everybody 2-way down Holman Drive. I'm guessing that that's why we would keep it separated, so that you don't have 2-way on a road with that much traffic, with people turning and causing congestion. That's a good assumption.
Correct. So splitting it like this does allow vehicles to have better ability to access business.
Okay. Tom?
It was my understanding when we were at that meeting that the DOT said they're gonna pay to fix Bigelow Street, because as it stands, there is no way that street would hold up under the traffic just going down to the park. And I think Woman Lakeview Drive would be the better bet instead of the other 2. That's my personal opinion.
I believe that they do have to make the roads work in order to do a reroute. Scott?
Correct. So the road has to be brought up to standard, and then the road would be inspected and basically videoed prior to the start of the detour, and then it would be inspected after the construction project. And the DOT would be responsible for any necessary repairs because of the detour traffic.
Karen?
But not the resurfacing of Holman Drive.
Not necessarily the initial resurfacing,
Right.
no. That is a topic of negotiation at this time.
I think the second option, while it appears more reasonable in terms of not having a $150,000 estimated price tag, has just too many turns through a residential. And I recognize that it'd be phased in, so it wouldn't be in effect the total building season in 2024, but even so, it seems like it's pretty disruptive of residential areas. So I really like the first option. I continue to be concerned about the price tag that the first option has of $150,000. And while it's nice that DOT says that they're interested in cost sharing, until we see what that means. Is that 10% versus 90? Is it a 50-50? Is it, we don't know what that means. And serving on the finance committee, I know how hard it is to get the critical capital projects included. This would, as Scott said, take half of our what we usually budget for capital projects, but maybe we'll have a windfall, and when we do the budget for 23, we can figure it out, or DOT will come forth, or there will be some stimulus money or infrastructure money. I think we should go with option one at this point, pending
Contingent upon
funding.
substantial funding from the
right.
DOTs. Dave?
Yeah, I would agree with Karen. The Third Street option, you can see just on the map, it's fairly dense residential area. We've got Jackie's Field in there, and there's a lot of kid traffic on bikes on 3rd Street. It always has been kind of the avenue kids use to get east to west in town. I would not be in favor of that. And, paving Holman Lakeview Drive is, it's almost criminal that we have a dirt road on our lake shore. I think we should definitely explore that option, since we've also had discussions regarding expanding our campground into that area. I think that would be the one I would vote for.
Is there a motion that we want to make tonight, or do people feel like they want to think about this more? I think that the DOT is not going to come forward voluntarily saying that they're going to pay for anything unless we do decide that that is the route that we would like to go, and that is contingent upon their substantial participation in financing that.
Madam Mayor, I would so move that we endorse option one with the caveat that our expectation is that we will have some financial or cost sharing with Department of Transportation in terms of the paving of Holman Drive.
I second that.
That was a tie. I'll give that one to Tom. So we have a motion by Karen and a second by Tom to go with option one as a design for the reroute contingent upon substantial support from the DOT.
Correct.
Are there any questions or further discussion on this item? Is anyone here interested in this item? Is anyone looking for us to open the floor for participation on this at all? Because that's something that we could do for sure.
Seems like you got it pretty well covered up there.
All right. Further questions?
No, I'd like to hear more thoughts, but I think this is something that, just for this topic alone, is good enough until we know.
Tony, do you mind switching the screen back to the other view so I can just see if anyone has their hand raised or anything?
Well, nobody does, so I can see that.
Okay. So seeing no other questions, comments, or discussion, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Okay, next item, public hearing, discussion, and action on the 2021 payable and 2022 municipal tax levy. Is there a motion to open the public hearing?
So moved.
Second.
Motion by Carl, second by Karen, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. And our public hearing is open. And the first item is the general, or can we do we have to go in order, or can someone talk about any of the three?
First, you should see if there's any public comment.
About any of those. Is there anyone here for public comment on the municipal tax levy? So then, moot point. Then we can close the public hearing.
I move that we close the public hearing.
Second.
Motion by Karen, second by Carl to close the public hearing. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Then I would look for a motion on the general fund, debt service, and capital 2022 budget and line item adjustments. So there had to be a few adjustments, and I don't know if that's anything that you need to address at all. We've gone through all of that already.
They were minor, weren't they, $500 plus? 580.
So there really weren't many
Right.
adjustments. This is just basically an opportunity, if there's any other last minute changes that the council would like to make related to the budget, now is your opportunity to do so.
And the only thing that I would like to bring up that I neglected to during this whole entire process is talk about the fact that we really should budget for a website redo at some point. It's been a while, and along with changing over to a .gov, we really should look at a more secure website content management system. So just something to keep in mind. But I don't know that that's something we need to make a specific dollar amount for.
Well, if you are looking to do this project next year, it would need to be included in the budget, and right now it is not. So you would have to make some adjustment from something.
Okay, so I guess I'm not gonna propose that we do it, but it's something that we should all keep in mind going forward, that we should plan for this year for the next year's budget then.
And Mayor, I would move approval of the general fund, debt service, and capital 2022 budget as presented.
You technically don't need a motion on it right now, other than what you can tentatively approve it, but the formal approval is on the budget is actually next month.
So you don't need a motion at all?
Not on that topic.
Okay, all right.
I will add, however, one thing that has not been discussed in great detail, and I'll want to make sure that this gets wrapped up or included, is we had several capital items in the that were recommended in the park outlay, which is kind of another offshoot of the budget, and so I don't have those listed here. They were in the original budget memo. If you recall, we can take care of these things at a later date, but for planning purposes going forward, if we're going to be, one of those items is engineering for campground expansion, which we are still working on getting engineering costs related for that project, which you had approved last month. Tennis courts, walking trail, and yeah. But we did not do the yurt as opposed to the park planning.
Right.
But keep that in mind, because we'll want to get some direction on that at the next meeting as well.
Would those engineering costs come out of this year's budget or out of that budget that we're approving to work on the campground?
Those would be out of the park outlay, which is basically a separate pot of money. With what we have going on, we're probably going to need to start creating a separate budget for that fund as well, which we've never done before.
Karen?
Well, I was just going to follow up on one of Scott's comments. You were saying that at our next meeting, we would look at additional park outlay? Or just the engineering?
At the next
cost?
meeting, I would like to further discuss those recommended items. Maybe we'll have the specific costs on the engineering.
Okay.
But we'll want to have some of that.
But those projects being funded out of the park outlay fund?
Correct.
Okay, that was I was puzzled by that because
Yes.
we've really completed the capital improvement budget.
Correct.
Okay.
Not in the regular capital
Okay,
budget.
that's what my question was. Thank you.
Okay, so we don't need action on the first bullet there, but we do on the resolutions.
Correct.
So I would look for a motion on resolution 21-010, adopting the 2021 tax levy.
And I would move approval of resolution 21-010 regarding the 2021 tax levy.
Second.
Motion by Karen and a second by Carl. Are there any questions or discussion on that? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. And then next is resolution 21-011, the county library levy exemption, which apparently is a standard resolution that we do every year. So because we do have a library, we don't have to be taxed by the county. And those communities that don't have a library do get taxed by the county, and then that is shared with those of us that do have libraries. So,
Madam Mayor, I would move approval of resolution 21-011, the county library levy exemption.
Second.
motion by Karen and a second by Carl to approve resolution 21-011. Any questions or comments, discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. The next item, tab number 7, discussion and action on approval of 2022 water and sewer utility budgets. I'm going to pull this up real quick. So the action that we're looking for is on a sewer rate increase. And that is due to the fact that our current revenue does not equal our payments on that service. And by statute, it is supposed to, or no, not by statute, we just need it to. We need it to balance. And it is a very slight adjustment, it looks like, that it would take to do that. And so that's what's being proposed, is a 1.5% increase. Average is $1 something. $1.75.
Madam Mayor, but are we not also approving the 22 water and sewer utility budgets in addition to the sewer rate increase?
So that is a good question, Scott.
So I'm asking for your tentative approval of the water and sewer utility budgets, the ability to apply for an inflationary increase for the water utility at the appropriate time next year, and the sewer rate increase on the fixed charge portion.
So tentative approval, because next month is final approval on all of these.
Madam Mayor, I would move a tentative approval of the 2022 water and sewer utility budgets with the sewer rate increase and the potential of an inflationary increase for the water base rate.
Is there a second?
Second.
Motion by Karen, second by Carl. Are there questions on that or discussion?
Madam Mayor?
Karen?
My only comment is that, as we read this summary that Scott has provided, it's encouraging that both the water utility and the sewer utility are really holding their own. They're paying the bills and becoming even more efficient as staff continue to absorb a number of the tests in-house, which has helped considerably in their budgets. I think that we can't lose sight of the fact, however, that there is still a $7 million debt on both of those two combined. One is $3.2 million and the other is a little over $3 million. So, we're doing okay, but we still owe lots of money.
Scott?
And I don't have a question, I'm just, making that comment.
I can tell he has a response.
Okay.
I would say that the sewer utility is definitely doing a lot better than it has, and this has been a long, methodical process to get it back in the black. But we're starting to see that progress, but there's still a number of capital items that we're not able to fund. There are additional utility projects that are out there that there's a couple of streets where we have some issues that we would like to actually fix, but we don't have those dollars to do that at this time. And you are correct on the debt. I mean, the debt is still over half of the budget for these utilities. And we are going to be adding to this debt with the Bayfield Street project. I mean, that is largely going to be utility debt. Some will be stormwater, we'll have some general fund portions on streetlights and whatnot, but.
And some grants.
But, the majority of it is going to be utility. So.
Duly noted. Thank you both for that attention to detail. Any other questions, comments, or discussion on this item? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Next item, discussion and action on approval of 2022 Harbor Commission budget, and that is tab 8. Carl, is there anything that you have to add to the memo?
No, we need to begin to work on trying to finalize some of these. It's a little bit right now like chasing squirrels. So getting some final costs. So we are taking a look here. We're trying to be consistent with the comprehensive plan and what was put forth there as far as prioritization and doing capital repair. So that's really fundamentally what we're about at this point.
Okay. Thank you.
Karen, question. Carl, you noted in your last minutes of the Harbor Commission that the Pier 4 project potentially would be eligible for a DNR grant.
That's correct.
Is that something that the Harbor Commission is going to pursue?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Right now, the difficulty is getting a quote because of the supply chain
Sure.
issues and getting quotes from the people we need to get quotes from, and because it has to tie to the existing dock. They're declining the quote right now. So,
What's the time frame on that grant availability?
the grant is considered quarterly, so
Oh,
we
okay.
missed this one. The next one will be in January. So if we could get quotes by then to submit in January, that'd be our next target date.
Keep our fingers crossed.
Yeah. I would move to approve the Harbor Commission budget.
I'll second that motion.
Motion by Carl, second by Karen, to approve the 2022 Harbor Commission budget. Are there any other questions, comments, or discussion? Thank you to Carl and the rest of the Harbor Commission for your work on this. I don't know if everyone knows, that's one of our only committees that the participants are not allowed to receive compensation to be on that committee, or that commission, I should say. So that is a labor of love. Thank you. One of many for you, I know, Carl. Seeing no questions, comments, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Next item is discussion and action on Charter Ordinance 2021-005 for the creation of aldermanic districts in the city of Washburn as part of the 2020 Census redistricting process. This is tab 9 in your books. This is a little wonky how they've redistricted at the county, and we don't have a whole lot of choices here. It's just between, or we already made the choice that we want to go with. Does anyone have any further comments, questions on the redistricting? We did not take advantage of Jeremy being on last month to talk about that at all. But the numbers are what they are, and we have to adjust so that we fit within the percentages. Scott, can you remind me, does this make it so that our two county supervisors are partially not in the city or something like that?
So this is what you're approving here tonight is the Aldermanic district map.
Okay.
So last month you approved the ward map
That
where
was-
we had to divide the city into blocks in order to match populations, because historically the city had 2 county board districts to itself. That's no longer the case. We have one that is entirely within the city, and now we have one that is shared with 2 neighboring towns. So that kind of changed that line significantly, which required us to adjust and have to create 5 wards as opposed to the 4 wards that we've had for the past 2 decades. And then in order to kind of reconnect things for aldermanic purposes, we had to cross lines. So basically what we have is we have
It's the district versus the ward is
correct. So we have 3 aldermanic districts. So basically, for the city purposes, you are only concerned about the aldermanic districts. Why we need the wards is because for 4 of our 5 wards, it splits between what county supervisor you would actually vote for. So basically, what happens on certain spring elections now, we will have 5 ballots as opposed to 4 ballots. So it has just simply become more complicated for us.
Lovely.
Move to adopt ordinance 21-005.
Motion by Carl,
Second.
second by Laura. Any further questions from anyone on this? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Next item is discussion and action on job description for mechanic equipment operator position and authorization to hire. This is tab 10 in your packet, where you have the job description and some adjustments that have been made to the previous job description to fit the current need in the department. And we do have Jerry here tonight if anyone has any questions. Thank you for being here.
You don't have the previous job description, but what was here before? All the highlighting? Jerry, you want to tell us about?
Are the highlights things that we're adding?
Yes.
Yes, so with the new job posting that's coming up, what I had mentioned to Scott and Tony was that the old job description, there were some items in there that weren't as specific as I'd like to see that position have. So the next person who is applying for this position has a clear representation of what his duties and assignments are. The main thing behind this was that we wanted to try to maintain a higher level of maintenance and readiness on the equipment, which wasn't really provided clearly in the last description. So we brought that up. Same thing with tools and inventory, to make it very specific on their job description as far as their expectations. One of the things that we had discussed was, and we included in here, was that the preparation of purchase and request for parts and equipment repairs. As of right now, any purchases that are performed on the equipment have to go through me. And I just said to Scott, moving forward with hiring a new staff member, wanted to try and keep that under control until I knew the person we were hiring. You know, you can kind of give them free reins on getting things to make sure that we're sticking to our budget and our priorities. You know, the old saying is what you would like and what you need, you know, so those were the biggest concerns I had with that job description, was just trying to get it more specific to the job details, yeah, so there isn't any questions moving forward what their duties and assignments were.
Awesome, thank you.
The one thing on the highlighted number 10, under qualifications, that I would just like to see is just, I think we should spell out specifically a couple of things that we're asking instead of just the general statement of being computer literate. I would say must be able to utilize email, you know, Word, even if we name like the Office suite or something specific that we want them to be able, that's measurable. Otherwise, computer illiterate could be interpreted a little bit generally. That would be my only suggestion on that.
20, got it?
In the minutes.
But this looks good.
I don't see 10 being a problem. If it's, we hire a younger, happen to get lucky and hire a good younger technician, there should be no problem with that.
But there's no guarantee of who
No.
you're gonna hire, so I think being specific helps, at least with whoever it is. That we know they're at least gonna be able to utilize email and, you know, whatever Word programs, word processing.
Do you think though that keeping it generalized will allow you, Jerry, to be specific on what that means for this job? I mean, so that it can flex depending on what you need from them?
Yes.
Otherwise, I mean, we could make, would you like to make the motion if we're asking to revise it?
I just point out that some of the equipment comes these days with a plug-in for computers, so it's not limited to just the Word and Excel and.
Correct.
Office.
Whatever the details are, I think, you guys can decide on the
Covered, yeah,
details.
you get too specific, then you leave out all of those things that come down the pike that require interface with computers.
And I'm not suggesting that it's comprehensive. I'm just saying a minimum of some general types of things that you're looking for would be good to include, so that people can leave themselves out. If someone isn't using email even on their computer, they should not apply for this job. You know what I mean? I don't know. Take it or leave it. That's my
The way you would
suggestion.
have to state it is including but not limited to.
Correct. Yeah. And you guys can decide what the details would be if you think you want to add some details to that. That's just a suggestion. But that's a good way to word it. Absolutely. Anyone else have any comments on this job description and or the authorization to hire? Thank you for your work on that. I think those are good improvements, Jerry.
Move to approve the position description with the modification to item number 10 and authorize the position to be filled.
I'll second that.
Motion by Carl and second by Tom. Any questions, comments, or discussion? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. And last but not least, discussion and action on authorization to dispose of surplus item. Good work cleaning out your closets there, Jerry.
We're getting there, we're getting there. So what this is pretty much what it says is the city used to, it was an old practice of utilities to thaw the water lines in the wintertime was to hook a welder generator to them and well, until you start burning a few hoses on or heating them up. That now I've been there. Anyway, we haven't used that in the past 8 years, it's been sitting up in storage, and we pulled it out. We got it serviced, found it to be running. It's in pretty decent shape. We discussed about trying to keep it, but unfortunately, this is more of a welder than a welder generator, and it has one plug in and on it for electricity, and it's 120 at 20 amps. We literally, for the size of it, our little Honda generator can run more than this thing can on a plug-in. So with that being said, I did do some research, and I found these things can go for a pretty good penny. A lot of pipeliner guys like to use them, but it all depends on the person and how far they're willing to come get it. We could easily just get 400 for it, or we could get a couple thousand for it, but it's definitely something we're not going to use, and it's just taking up space. And that's
Good
it.
work.
I'd move to approve the authorization of, what shall we say here?
To dispose of the surplus items.
Disposing of the surplus items as requested.
I'll second that motion.
Motion by Laura, second by Karen. Any questions or other comments, discussion?
Thanks, Jerry.
Yes, thank you.
More
And
coming.
Congratulations, you've just about made it through a year now, haven't you?
It's been a
Happy
year.
anniversary.
It's been a year.
All in favor of the motion?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thanks, everyone. We are adjourned.